What are you looking for, Kenya Beach?
That says, it's new to me. You're not in it.
No. Come, let's go.
You're too far to the side.
Yeah. You look relaxed.
Hi, online people. We are trying to get the presenters program ready, so just bear with us.
I'm good.
Still working on it, almost there. Okay, unfortunately, I think the online people, you're only gonna have audio. So let us know if you can hear that. We'll have Tom Kratz monitoring. And we'll switch back over to where those present can see. Sorry about that. We've got a Mac trying to hook up to other one and yeah. So,
I'm 15 minutes away.
okay. So switch back to input. You wanna do what you did before? And then let me know if you can hear the audio on this.
And that's where I left it.
Amazing.
There we go. Okay. Okay, can the people online hear the audio? Will you monitor that, Tom? Yes. No, I was sitting down there, not here. So,
To get from point A. What happened?
okay, do you want to do welcome and who's, as long as they can hear us on there? Do welcome and what we have coming up.
Just amazing.
All the technical difficulties.
Well, he doesn't have a way to get his fire. Big mine.
Yeah. So we have two people online that are just gonna get audio. You guys will get video, and then maybe when Tom P gets here, he'll magically snap his techie fingers on.
Maybe say, bring a USB drive, then we can get the Jim's machine.
Well, Tom's already on his way. He may carry those with him, I don't know. I looked here to see if I could find one, and I couldn't, so.
Good
PK's, do you have PK's email that has like what's coming up and all that business? Did the online people say they can hear us?
I just got. This is gonna be a,
It's gonna be a fun night.
yeah.
Well, we'll do the what's coming up in SEBA at the end. So Jim can get started with his presentation. This is Jim Wellwood. He's our state bee inspector, so don't be afraid of him. When he comes, he's gonna help you with your bees. Here, wait, I don't have PK's name tag on again, but you need to be more lively. You be louder. Louder. Yeah. So don't be afraid. He's here to help you with your bees, and he's gonna tell us all kinds of bee stuff. So welcome, Jim Wellwood.
Hey, I've been around the block a little bit. I used to be a fireman. I used to be the guy running into the burning buildings. Now I run into your beehive and look and see what's going on and try not to get stung. So I don't like to get stung. Is there anybody here that likes to get stung? Okay, good. We're all on the same team. Been keeping bees since 91, so I've gone through the school of hard knocks a couple times. So what is my job as a bee inspector? Well, we're trying to minimize the spread of disease. So in the 20s, there was a disease and it's still around today called American foul brood. Anybody ever heard of that? Anybody ever had it? Well, that's good. Say again?
Just COVID.
Just COVID, yeah. I help beekeepers teach and assist, so you'll have my telephone number if you don't have it already, and I'm happy to help you at any time. I'm a seasonal part-time worker. I live out of my car, work out of my car. Then I work the counties in central Illinois. We do regular hive inspections. We have moving permits. Anytime you have a hive and you move it between counties, call me up and I'll take a look at it to make sure it's healthy, and then we can move back and forth across county lines, and that's to minimize disease spread.
I got a question for you along that line.
Go for it.
Someone calls you with a swarm that's the next county over. It's supposed to get you out here to.
Okay, that's a good question. Who thinks that you should call me? Who thinks you shouldn't?
Shouldn't be able to call you.
Okay, so you say should. Who
I was
thinks-
asking. I abstain.
You abstain?
Well, after the week we've had and what's coming, call it.
You would call.
Should call, but don't. have
Should.
to.
Should call. Like everybody should be a registered beekeeper and they're not.
I don't know.
Hope everybody here is. I don't have a ticket book. I don't, not, that's my job.
That's
So-
told him not be scared of you.
Don't be scared, no, I'm here to help, just like you guys. So anytime that you have bees and brood, you should call them. So if you have a swarm, it doesn't have any brood, right? Right, so don't worry. They can put.
The scenario would be, I got a phone call last week from a tree trimmer, storm that went through Colfax. He said part of the tree snapped down, there's bees on the ground, there's still a tree that's gotta come down. Would you be interested in taking care of it? Do you have a tree,
Good
cherry pick? I said, no, but that would lead into,
Good thing you're retired if you wanna do that.
I said no.
You said no. Yeah.
Check with his phone.
but it is across county
That's
line.
a tricky situation.
Right.
Because like all the comb is fixed into the tree, how am I gonna take the removable comb out and look? Right? So eventually, probably you're gonna cut the combs out and put it into frames, call me up and we can look. Yeah, so that's how that should work. Is that clear? Is there any questions? Yes,
If you buy it from Livingston County and live in McLean County,
by a hive?
if you buy a new,
Yeah. Mhm. Yes,
But it should have been inspected by Livingston County.
right.
it has been inspected,
You don't have to have it inspected then.
not.
If you're the seller, it's the asset, right?
The seller is the one who should have things inspected. That's usually the way it works. Like when Tom's selling stuff, you know, when anybody's selling stuff, they'll call me up and say, hey, I'm ready to sell nukes. Can you come and take a look? Come take a look. So it's important to do, especially on nuke hives. One year, so I got a lot of war stories. One year, we had a guy who brought in, I think it was 600 nukes down to around Decatur area. And this was a commercial beekeeper, and these were old almond bees, and they brought them back here, split them up into nukes and sold them. But what happens when you're in almond pollination? How many beehives do you have in that area where they grow almonds? Millions, okay? So like, if one of them has COVID, if one of them has American foul brood, what's gonna happen?
All of them are.
Yeah, they're all gonna get it. So what's one of the treatments that you use for American foul brood, for European foul brood? What is it?
Petromycin.
It's an antibiotic, right? And so what it does is suppresses the symptoms of the disease. And we'll talk about the symptoms a little bit down the road here. It never makes the bacteria go away. So we looked at these boxes and they were all sprinkled with terramycin. Okay, well, everything looked good. We looked at a lot of them because we saw the antibiotic in there. And so then we started getting calls from people, hey, my hive is really starting to look kind of yucky. Can you come take a look? We did, then we found American foul brood. So it's really important to get your nuke hives inspected. And even still, it could be a problem. So I don't usually recommend people buy nuke hives. It could just work much better because you're not transferring diseases. Okay, there's some good questions. Any questions from the question? Yeah,
We had the opportunity a week or so ago to work with we'll call it a bee tree,
mm-hmm.
tree blew down in the storm.
Yep.
Do you have to worry about disease and stuff in those?
It's a beehive, right? And, a hive that's diseased is gonna be weak. And the way bees work is if there's a weak hive, a stronger hive is gonna go and run. So what do you think?
They were not weak.
Okay. But should you worry about it? Should you be observant? Yeah, definitely. Okay, this is what, 2022 looked like. We still have American foul brood. See that? One thing is European foul brood is really, really prevalent, especially south of like Springfield. So everybody who keeps bees should be registered with the state, and it's free. And it gives you the opportunity to be on my list, to come and look and see, but more importantly, if there's an outbreak of American foul brood or European foul brood, I can canvass the area 5 or 6, 10 miles around where you're keeping bees to make sure that the disease hasn't spread to your apiary. We collect GPS location data. Let's see, what do they call it now? Drift watch is called field watch, right? Is everybody signed up for that?
Yeah.
Field check or
Bee check,
bee check?
it's under field watch. but-
Field watch, they keep changing the names. Does everybody know what it is? Who doesn't? Okay, so this is a database assembled, I think Purdue does it. And the people that spray farm chemicals are supposed to consult that, I said supposed to, consult that before they do their spraying. So that you can take whatever actions you wanna do to keep your bees out of the cloud, so to speak. So over the course of my beekeeping career in my house, I live out in the country, and it took a lot of talking to people about having them call me or text me before they're gonna spray. And so what I do is at night, the night before, sometime the day before they're gonna spray, they let me know. And then last light of the day, I'll lock my bees into their hive. So then they go to sleep, can't fly, and then the next day, they come and spray. And so 24 hours later, I let them out, and whatever they sprayed is gonna be dry. What's gonna happen is you're gonna minimize them flying into the cloud. And that's about the best you're gonna do if you keep your bees out in the country. Sometimes being in town may be harder, because then you got all the ChemLawn people that are spraying to get rid of the clover that the bees are on, so it turns into a little bit tricky.
How long can you leave them in their box?
I've done it 2 days, I'd rather just do it 1 day. Because all the ag sprayers and the farmers, they don't talk to each other, and one guy will say one day he's gonna spray it, and then the next day somebody else is. I've done it 2 days. I don't like to do it 2 days.
What's the best way to block them in at night? What do you like to use?
I'd use a couple different methods. I have a solid entrance reducer that I put in. And then if you have other holes, I put duct tape over it so they can't fly. And, or you can put some kind of tarp over it. Some people have put screens on too, like screening. Like, when the bees go to almonds, they put a big, huge screen over them, like flexible window screen. Like a net, yeah. And to keep the bees in there, because as they're driving the semi down the road, there's a lot of stragglers. So those are the methods that I use. Yes,
So if you're on this drip list or whatever you call it, do they have to contact you?
they're supposed to. They're supposed to. They don't always. Unfortunately, in the classwork that they have to be able to spray, they hadn't even be licensed, state licensed. They don't make it a mandatory thing that they check for bees in the area. So you're gonna run into trouble.
How far are you saying? How far close to you the spring?
That's a really good question, because when I first started it, how far do bees fly? 3 to 5 miles? I said, yes, I'm a bee guy, I know what's going on, 5 miles, let me know. So it was great until they started calling every single day, when is spraying, when is spraying, when is spraying. So I just cut it down to a mile. It's not the best to do. So that's a really good question. Yeah.
About the mosquito sprayers in town at night, or are they okay the next morning?
Specifically, I don't know, but if the bees aren't flying in the cloud, that's about the best you're gonna do. That's a good question. I remember as a kid used to run up and down the street playing in the cloud. Well, there's been- Good questions.
website is beecheck.org.
Here's the map. And this is rough because, we got a couple people that quit, a couple people died. So basically, everybody Bloomington area, if you got a question, just give me a call. There's the form I fill out. Beekeepers, they can be any age, love making the honey, fascinated with bees. So in the springtime, it's just absolutely fascinating to sit in front of the hive and watch the purple pollen come in. Anybody ever do that? It's really cool. What flower does it come from?
That weed and,
It's a weed in the field, yeah.
Oh.
Henbit, yeah. It's really cool. So nobody likes to get stung, but you're willing to overcome that fear, right? Yes? No?
I keep waiting for it.
You keep waiting for it?
Overcoming the fear.
Been fortunate so far this year.
So far. Beekeepers are very, very friendly, very, very helpful. So in the long time that I've been doing this, about 13 years, there's only been one guy who was almost crabby, but everybody's pretty nice.
Crabby bee, the chief of Chicago.
Being surly, being disagreeable, not a nice person. Just one who was almost there. So yeah, it's good. So the things that I learned in the 90s about beekeeping have changed significantly. So you always need to be thinking and learning and doing research. But if you ask 10 beekeepers a question, how many different answers do you get? Well, what's gonna happen if you start doing internet searches on it?
A lot.
Hey. Some of the information is just false. Others of it doesn't apply for our area, so you just gotta be careful. And then the bees don't read the books. They just don't. So the bees that we're keeping are from Europe, 20 to 50,000 a hive. They're gonna make 2 times roughly approximately the honey that they need to survive the winter. Smoking the bees calms them and stimulates them to feed, and it also masks the alarms. So does anybody not use a smoker when they're working their bees?
Look at them, I know.
No? So like when I go to your house, I'm gonna light a smoker. Because it's like, when you see a dog walking down the street and it's barking at you, is it a friendly dog or is it an ugly dog? It depends, you don't know. I know when I go in, so I'm gonna have the smoker. So it's a tool that I use. And you can too. It's livestock. These are livestock. Now, who'd have thunk that? So there's analogies between keeping cows and keeping bees. They need management. You can't just take the bees and throw them in there and say, hey, they're good. You gotta get out there and look at them. Well, then that's part of the fun too. So cows have bedding, bees have foundation, feed. The protein source is what? Pollen. What's carbohydrate?
Nectar.
The nectar of the honey, right? There's reproduction and don't neglect them. Okay, so we're talking about inspection. When to inspect, how often, preparing, opening the hive and what to do. Records. So the preferred days would be on a warm sunny day. And why is that?
Because they're out foraging.
They're out foraging.
Those cold rainy days, they're gonna be grumpy and I'll let you know.
They're let you know it. The fewest bees are gonna be in the hive during the heart of the day. Avoid the rainy and cold days. I don't always have that luxury. I remember specifically one day I could see the storm clouds on the horizon, but I had, some hive to look into. It was not fun. So talk about the school of hard knocks, yeah. Bees can sting through my suit and through my shirt. And if you're looking at bees at night, or if you have to move them for pollination or something, The bee stinger is about that long, as soon as the sun goes down. Um, so there's gonna be a nectar dart. Does everybody know what that means? Who doesn't know what a nectar dart is? Nectar dart would be like when there's no plants blooming, that the bees can get nectar. So if you went to the food store and there was no food on the shelves, but say one carton of milk, and you had 10 people going for that carton of milk, right? People be fighting for it maybe. Well, the bees are kind of the same way. They have their bank account filled with honey and they're gonna protect it. So when you get a nectar dart, it's gonna be interesting too. How often to inspect? Well, sometimes life gets in the way of beekeeping, right? Graduation, whatever you got going. 7 to 10 days is good, especially this time of year when the bees are apt to be swarming. Swarm season is basically between May and July, but that doesn't mean it's not gonna happen on either side of that. Because the bees don't read the book. And every season is different, how your forage comes and when it comes in bloom. Too frequent inspections can make the bees irritable and it could cause them to say they want to go someplace else. So prepare yourself, especially like the last weeks when it's been hot. Hydrate yourself. Wear whatever protective equipment you are comfortable wearing. So if you go to a group hive opening and there's some guy who has on nothing and he's like Mr. Joe Beekeeper and just doing whatever, that's him. Let him do that. If you don't want to do it, don't feel intimidated by putting on a full suit. So if I come to your house and look at your apiary, I'm gonna be in a full suit with rubber gloves and looking at the bees. So, you know, it's like dress however you feel comfortable. It's a good idea to have a Benadryl or EpiPen in case you turn up, you have a reaction to the stings. Light the smoker. Another way that people sometimes calm their bees is they'll spray them with sugar water. Does anybody do that? Yeah, have you done that? Yeah, it works. I especially do that when I'm installing a pack to bees so they don't fly away. That's another story. So when I come and inspect your bees, because I'm in so many different hives, I'm gonna have the hive's tools cleaned. I'm gonna put them in bleach. There should be no wax on my tools. If there is, it's gonna be heated up with a torch. So I use the propane torches that have a, what do you call them? We push in the clicks.
Igniter.
Yeah, igniter. Is it piezoelectric? Is that it?
Yeah.
Something like that? Yeah, okay. They're really, really, really handy for a lot of different things you do in the beekeeping business. So I use that to warm up my tool, to scald it, and then I'll put it on the ground, do that, and then I've got to try to pick it up like hot potato and put it in my pocket and use it, so it's kind of fun. Has anybody ever eaten bananas and then go to work their bees? No? What's the trouble with that? Anybody know?
Oh, like the pheromones.
You got it. So when the bees sting, they let out a scent. It's called a pheromone. And it smells a little bit like bananas. So if the bees are smelling bananas, they may think that somebody's stinging. So the way it works when you get a sting, the pheromone's released and then some of the other kamikazes are coming back behind to help. So a school of hard knocks. I was putting my wet honey supers back on my hive. And I got one sting on my cat, and then everybody else came to sting too. And so then my cat swelled up to about twice the size that it was. So yeah, that's why you would also light a smoker. If you get stung there, you can take the smoke and then that confuses the scent a little bit. So if you don't use a smoker, reconsider that. Have a plan. So Bee health is boiled down into nutrition, that's what kind of nectar's coming in, avoiding the spray, varroa reduction, and we're not talking much about varroa. Having healthy guts. Do people here buy used equipment? Don't raise your hand. I'm just gonna suggest that maybe you shouldn't buy used equipment because disease is harbored in that. Genetic diversity is important, especially in a queen, to make sure you have enough diversity that she's productive and prolific. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna be looking for diseases, we're gonna be looking at this queen, see how she's doing. We're gonna look at the brood nest. Look to see if the bees are bringing in nectar, see if you have enough room for stores, your honey supers, see what kind of capped honey, and then roughly what you wanna do next week. So this is a lot to keep track of, right? Do people, well, let's start out, who's got a beehive? So everybody's hand should be up in there. Okay, everybody's got a beehive, at least one? Between.
When you said A, B, I thought
At least one, at least one.
Okay, no, we got a number.
Okay, who's got 5 or more? Keep your hand up. Five or more? 10 or more? How many you got this week?
Good question.
10 or more? 20 or more?
Maybe 21.
Maybe 20. Okay, so everybody's basically 10 or less. Right? Mostly, except for the overachievers. Or the commercial beekeepers of the club. How do you keep track of all this information? It's like, when you have children, maybe it's easier, maybe it's not, to find out what's going on with each children, but like, if you've got 10 kids, how are you gonna keep track of what's going on? What are some ways that people do that? Speak up.
Ask the other kids.
It's their kids.
She uses her phone.
Use the phone, okay. You got a sheet on each, something on each hive?
Looking to know.
Every time? You got a piece of paper? Each one?
What we've seen.
That's really good.
She let me into a bad beekeeping habit. We use a voice recorder to record what we see. And then we transfer that down to an Excel spreadsheet with the new sheet for each day that we've got a new workbook for each hive. So if I examine it today, there's a tab at the bottom that says that date.
Why is that bad?
What?
Why is that bad?
Because,
Oh.
It's probably too detailed.
actually, it's not that. It would actually works out to my advantage, because if you got 20 hives and I don't get through all the hives in a day. So I'll go through, I'll do my recordings. The next morning, I sit down with my cup of coffee and I listen to it and enter, oh, hive. A has
Blah, blah, blah.
a lot of brood. And I might be able to steal from that, and I know which frame numbers to take. To put over the.
That's very detailed.
Wow.
She's framed.
I just know the naughty one.
We got paper and we got paper / voice recording, what else?
I do my notes on my phone, but I primarily only do it on the ones that are not perfect. So if they're perfect, great.
Just, the perfect ones, you're just clouding your mind with information that you don't need, right? Okay,
But if you see that you have 8 frames of brood in that perfect,
Mhm.
you might keep that as the note of what frames you want to bring.
She balances them out.
Yeah, I do all the time, because that's what Tom said.
See, then you know what one's for.
okay. Does anybody else have a method?
It's the Marlon Hirschberger method, I write on the lid, because I'm too dumb to keep track of
My favorite.
phones and.
Yeah, 'cause he can read your lid when he comes.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is getting a Sharpie pen. And taking your Sharpie pen and write whatever kind of notations you wanna make on there. The date you're in there, it's Queen right. As you saw, whatever you wanna keep track of, and it's on the lid. So like if you have the piece of paper, at least it's in a spiral book and it's not gonna blow away, but some people have used loose leaf pieces of paper and you're out there keeping bees and there goes your information. Or you use that Sharpie and write on the lid, it's not going away.
You just paint over it when you're done, you got a lid filled up.
Okay, so that's where I was going next.
Well, there's two things, so one, it wears off of most.
Or you can paint, if you get painted metal, or if you just have metal, you can put some kind of solvent on there and permanent marker is not permanent.
That's. I should say, on our breeding stock, we now label that with ear tags, so we have cattle tags, like, or inch on the ear. So we put a nail on there and it has a number, so that's how we keep track of which queens are in which hives, we know which crop. But.
He's keeping track of a lot more hives than 10.
It's all, the day-to-day stuff.
It's important to keep track of what's going on, because if you think you'll remember, if you have gray hair, you're not gonna remember. Well, maybe you do, but I got gray hair, what's left anyway, and I don't remember. Okay, so we're gonna evaluate the conditions, the weather, what's it like out, nectar sources, is there nectar coming in? Is there water available from your hives, by your hives, around your hives? So a lot of times the beekeeper will put water, like, here's the boxes and they'll put it right next door. And bees don't tend to do that. You gotta have it a little bit further away before they find it. It's like torpedoes don't arm before they're so far away. Was that Hunt for Red October movie? Was that it?
Definition of farther.
Yeah.
No, what is the
Definition? At least 100 feet.
Okay.
Experiment.
They get.
Got line probably from here to that door.
Yeah, that doesn't work. So like at my house, I live out in the country and I put a big, from a 55 gallon drum underneath one of my metal roofs so that when it rained, it filled up with water. And I didn't ever have to fill it all summer. And then I just floated some wood in it. So, yeah,
It's like 300 ponds, in the yard, 100 yards away.
no, that's plenty fine. For a stream, it doesn't take much water. So like, I'm gardening and I got my plants and I got my plant starts, you know, how you water the little things. The bees would be there like a day after I was watering, they're still getting moisture up from the dirt, so it's not a lot.
Do they like that because it has minerals from the soil or?
I think they're getting the water, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
is that water better than like just? Cause they seem to like that out of the plant.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
If your neighbor's got a swimming pool, they will.
Right.
Saltwater.
Especially if you're in town, that's gonna be the quickest way to make your neighbors unhappy neighbors. So for sure, if you're keeping who's keeping bees in town? Everybody else is in the country? Is there anybody that's not keeping bees and is just learning? Well, okay, that's good. Okay, so evaluate the adult bee population and activity in front of the hive. So a lot of times in commercial operations, there'll be a pallet with 4 hives on it, and rather than look at every hive in 100 hive apiary, I'll walk around the 4 and I'll look for the one that has the least bees flying in and out. Because that's gonna be the one with the, maybe the least amount of bees, and maybe there's some problems. But if you have 1s or 2s or 3s, you should look at all of them. So looking into the hive, see how many are flying in and out. What is bearding?
They camp out front.
When they're out and hanging out in front of the hive. Especially like when it's 90 degrees, you see them all there, it's like, what's going on? Well, that's the bee air conditioning system is sitting on there. So bearding can also be a precursor to swarming, so the two are somewhat related. And like when you live in the country and you miss covering up your bees when the spray's coming through, you'll see dead bees in front of the hive. So if you don't get into your hives often enough, you might need to use one of these. And anybody ever have that, where life gets in the way and you can't get in there? Or one of those. But there are some people that sell really cool hive tools. And I have several in my car that are the traditional hive tool with the straight and the curved end, and also has a hook on. And so those are the ones you should get. Those work the best. They work really, really good. So checking your hive. Approach it from the rear. Why?
You get out of the path there, yeah, and they're path to flight.
In the flight path, right? Give the entrance a puff of smoke. And then wait for a little bit, 30 seconds maybe. That just lets them know that, hey, something's going on here. They're not gonna maybe be as aggressive. Then I open up the outer cover. Look for hive beetles between the inner cover and outer cover. And if you do, start with your hand-to-hand combat. Squish, 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 because you don't want those things in there. What I do is I'll take my outer cover and I'll put it upside down on the ground and I'll stack everything on there. Because how does honey work with grass on the ground or dirt? Doesn't work. So that's what I do. I don't try to stand them on edge. I just stack everything on the outer cover. Then I open up the inner cover after I've squirted a little bit of smoke down the little oval hole. You should have some bees come up and bounce off your veil. They're checking out like, what's going on here? So like when you're looking at a hive, you need to really pick up on some really, really fine details. And that will be one to pick up on. When you open that inner cover and you're exposing the top frame to the hive, what's going on there? Are the bees just kind of shivering on the top bars? Or are they active? Are they running? What are they doing? And just make note of that. Mentally. Work from the top down and from the inside out. So the reason you work from the outside in is because in the brood box, for sure, the queen's gonna be in the middle. And you don't wanna roll the queen, so you start on the outside and then just slide, take that frame out and then slide the other ones over. So you can look to see what's going on. Okay. So if you're in the brood box, you can kind of tell the strength of the hive by looking in between the frames. So you know where the brood activity is by what bees are down in between the frames. So smoker. There's a lot of different things that you can use for smoker fuel. I've used pine needles, hemp baling twine, burlap, blue jeans, wood sticks. Anybody else got anything?
I started using smoker pellets for my.
Smoker pellets,
Also from your corn stalks.
corn stalks, cobs. But you gotta live in the country to get the cobs.
All from, it appears everybody's in the country.
Yeah.
They use hay.
Hay, okay,
Yeah, it works.
they were good. So we talked about the propane torch. Use the propane torch and keep pumping on that thing until you get a good fire spewing out of there. Another trick is you could take some green grass. There should be plenty of that, or leaves or something green. Throw it on top because that'll steam and it won't burn, and that'll help give some cool smoke. So when you're,
I was just gonna say, I read something where it said to get the thing started and then put some, whatever, your burlap or whatever, back on top of it. So you don't have hot smoke when you smoke
yeah, because you don't want to be having a blowtorch. So that grass is a little trick. So the other side of this is you lit the smoker, when you were done with it, do something with the burn stuff. Don't throw it in the back of your pickup truck and drive down the road. because you could be burning the back end of the pickup. So invariably, you'll be blowing through your hive and maybe you don't need smoke or you're not using smoke and the smoker will appear to be out. If you take the lid and you pop it off and you start pumping on the bellows again, it should fire back up. So the other side of that is if you got a really hot smoker and it's really puffing away, turn it out of the side and then that'll cool it off too because not as much oxygen is coming out because you got the currents drawing more air through there and then the fire goes in. Okay, so what to look for? After we remove the most outer frames, we're looking for the mood of the bees. So the gentle, nervous, aggressive. We're looking for population, looking for evidence of the queen. So what is gonna be evidence of the queen?
Eggs.
Eggs,
And like brood larva.
larva,
Seeing her,
say again?
seeing her,
Seeing her, yeah. If you're good, you can see her, yep. Do you have to see her every time you're in a hive? No. Just need to see evidence of her. Look at the brood pattern. Is she laying well? Will be an indication that she's laying well.
It's nice and thick.
If you have sporadic brood patterns, what are some possibilities that could be going wrong?
I got one honey bound.
Honeybound, okay.
My
Mites is a reason for patchy brood pattern.
hygienic behavior,
Hygienic behavior. How about European foul brood? How about American foul brood? Both of those can be. Parasitic mite syndrome is a really, really bad mite infestation, would look that way too. Queen problems, if the queen is not young and prolific, she could be running out of gas and you have bad pattern. Look for the queen cells. Queen cells look like a peanut standing up in the hive. And they can be either in the middle of the frame or on the bottom. That could be signs of swarming or maybe you squish the queen or anything's possible. Pests, what other kind of things like to live in our hive? Ants,
Earwigs.
earwigs,
cockroaches.
Huh?
My,
mice,
Black bee worms.
waxworms. It's good. If you got a hive that has waxworms in it, it's probably not a very strong hive. Probably got other problems. Hives don't generally die from waxworms. It's a result of a hive that can't defend itself. What other kind of pests live in there?
beetles,
Small hive beetles. Spiders? I've seen some big ones.
wow.
So if you see 3 or 4 small hive beetles in a hive, is that a problem?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet. If you see a bunch of larvae on a corner of a frame, and you're not sure what it is and it's all sticky and gross, that's probably small hive beetles that have slimed things and that's the problem. So yeah, small hive beetles. The traps work pretty good. If you have a couple small hive beetles, put in a couple traps. If you have a lot of small hive beetles, put in a lot of traps. From a management perspective, if you put hives in the sun, there tends to be less problems with small hive beetles. And diseases, we're looking for things that just don't look right. We already talked about brood pattern and things that don't smell right. American foul brood sometimes smells like stinky socks.
Sometimes you'll see, especially early spring, a lot of bee poop on.
Yeah. I got some pictures. Yeah, no seam is one. Okay, so here's a brood frame. What do we think on this? Who says this is a good one? Raise your hand.
The caption does.
It's good. Who thinks that this is a bad one? And the presenter doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, thanks for the vote of confidence. It's not every cell, but it's pretty close. Generally, you know that there's gonna be honey here, maybe some pollen, right? So what about here? What's going on there? What's going on there? Drones. They're gonna hatch, yeah. Do we need drones in a hive? Yes and no. Okay, I like that answer. So if you have a queen she's mated and she's in this hive and she's doing all this business, you don't need drones. Because the drones are just there if they need to mate a new virgin queen. So these are just like the in case. See over here, this is maybe hard to see. There's a queen cup. So who's never seen a queen cell in their hive? Anybody? We know what queen cells are, okay. So that looks pretty good. I can also tell you that that frame has been around the block. It's pretty old. I can tell a couple different reasons. The comb is dark and that wood is really well used. I'm a proponent of using 3 to 5 year old foundation because everything bad is held into the wax. You can't really clean it up. So if you live in town and you got Chemlon and the bees get Chemlon on them and they do make it back, it's gonna wind up in the wax. If you live out in the country and they're spraying Roundup and they can make it back, they're gonna get that in there. And everything affects the queen, whether or not she's really viable and really healthy and really giving us good brood patterns.
Jim, on those drones, queen lay drone for the community. She may not need it, but maybe other hives in the community.
Yeah.
To get a mating site going.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just in case, that's just nature.
And then won't they kill the drones in the wintertime if they feel there's not enough sufficient food in the hive?
No, they kick them out. They kick them out in winter because those are more mouths to feed. They say, see you later. You're expendable. Goodbye. It's all over.
Do you recommend getting new frames every 3 to 5 years?
I do, yeah.
Do.
Mhm. So the people that are the most successful at beekeeping have the cleanest operations. So like, if anybody knows anything about confinement hog operations where they put a lot of pigs into a small space and they feed them, then they turn them into bacon in 6 months. After they ship them out, they go in there and they just clean like crazy with all different kind of chemicals and they clean. Because if there's any kind of disease stuff left, that's gonna be transferred on to the next batch and it's not gonna go as good. So you know that really well. But for those people that don't, people that treat their hives in that like manner are the most successful.
Can you talk about, is it just after several years, change out the foundation, if you're using plastic?
Well, that depends. Depends if you got time or money. So I've gone through stages where I do both of these things. I have a big turkey burner and I have a big pot. And when I have time, then I put the frames, I take a knife and cut the foundation out. And then take it and put it in my burn pile. And then I'll boil those for a little bit. Sometimes put sodium hydroxide in there to kind of etch it and kill anything that's possibly on there, scrape it, and then put in a new piece of. That's what I do. But then also, if you don't have time to do that, there's a guy up in Minooka who'll sell you brand new frames. And they're all put together and they're all nice. Yeah, all you gotta do is give them a little bit of money. It works out to The $259, no, more than that.
Or
4.25. So it depends if you got time or money. So cleaning out frames is a good wintertime job. But 250 is just for foundation.
What do you do, Jim, when it comes to the excessive, pollen in their backfill and there's no space for brood and everything else?
Really, really good question. So does everybody understand what's going on?
Yeah.
Somebody talked about being honey bound. That was you. Okay. Do you use a queen excluder?
It's two deeps on there right now, and they were queenless for a while, and the time they were queenless, they're so popular. The time they were queenless, they filled everything up. They bring them out, let them empty them out, let them all empty out the drain, empty them out, and see what will happen.
So he gave us a really important fact here. The hive was queenless. So when it's queenless, that means there's no babies to feed. Well, what do the worker bees feed the baby bees? They feed them nectar, but they also feed them pollen. And when the pollen starts to stack up, that happens when they're not feeding it to the babies. So what do you do with those frames? It's like I have these frames. I don't really want to get rid of them. But a lot of times they won't reuse this stuff. They'll prefer the fresh stuff. So it's like they'd rather go to the farmer's market and get good fresh vegetables than go to McDonald's and eat McDonald's, right? So unfortunately, probably the best thing to do is take them out and just put them on the side, and maybe you can use them in the future, but probably you won't.
It's sort of one of those, do you have money or do you have time? You can't trade the frames. Or trade the
So that brings up an interesting story too. So we're talking about, is everybody using plastic foundation? No. Not used, so, anybody using natural wax foundation? No,
Oh, natural wax.
natural wax foundation with the wires in it?
Yeah.
That's what you guys are using? Everybody else is using the plastic. Okay, so I go over to Arthur to inspect bees. Beekeepers are, well, at least me, I'm super cheap. And I have Scottish heritage, so like, I try to make Abraham Lincoln sing. And a lot of times he does. It doesn't make my wife happy, but he does. So this Amish guy over there, he was trying to be cheap and he has plastic foundation and he ran into something similar to what we're talking about, build up pollen. And so what he did was he took his hive tool, I'm gonna scrape it off and they're gonna reuse it. So I went up in this guy's boxes with this hive. So there's probably 4 or 5 deep boxes on there. And I start looking through in our 10-frame equipment, I'm looking like 2 frames in this box, 3 frames in this box, 1 here. Well, they scraped all the wax off it and the bees don't like to reuse the plastic. Natural beeswax is a better foundation system, but for the bees to take to it, but when you put when you put wax on the plastic foundation, they take to it just fine. So just scraping the stuff off and trying to encourage them to use it again doesn't really go over so well. Now you can take a paintbrush and try to paint wax on there, capping wax, nice, fresh, clean wax. But then we're going back to a time versus money thing. $2.59 versus how much time for wax, blah, 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 blah. Just go up the road to Minook and he's happy to help you out. Okay. So I did the natural beeswax foundation with embedding wires and it was a lot of work. If you boil the frames, scrape them out good, and slap a new piece of plastic in, it can happen pretty quick.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
I think she was kind of curious for you to describe what honey bound means.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me back. Okay. How many people use squeeze excluders here? Quite a few. They're good and bad for this reason. So honey bound means, especially when you're using a queen excluder, there's no room underneath in the brood nest, underneath the queen excluder for the queen to lay eggs. When they sense that there's no room, what do the bees do? Bye-bye, see you later. So that happens all the time. So it can be because there's too much honey down there. It can be because there's frames with pollen down there. It can be any amount of reason. If you started out your package of bees and you got 10 frames and life got in the way and it's full of honey and eggs and pollen and everything, there's no more room. See you later, they're gonna fly away and swarm. So honey bound can be all honey down there, it can be anything, but everything's full. So it can be below the queen excluder, above the queen excluder, etc. Does that answer your question, whoever had that one?
Can you explain that in pollen bound?
Pollen bound, like we talked about, when the queen goes bad or you're not raising babies, you're not feeding that pollen, so it tends to pack and stack up on frames. Like I just saw a hive the other day where there was 20 frames in the brood nest and probably 18 of them were full of pollen. So the queen can't lay, the hive's gonna dwindle and it's gonna swarm. So for that reason, I don't like to use queen excluders. Because if life gets in the way of beekeeping and you can't get in there often enough to make sure that there's enough room in the brood nest and that there's enough boxes to put honey in, you're gonna save yourself the price of your nuclear package.
We like to, leave the queen excluder out until they get putting some in the. If the queen starts laying up in the super, get her back down, and then we put the excluder in.
So here's another way to look at queen excluders. If you really are adamant about using one, use it until you've got one super of honey all capped. And leave that and use that as your queen excluder, because the queen's not gonna walk across capped honey and lay up. Now, if you're taking the box up and you're looking around and she gets up there, well, that's another story. But you can use the capped honey super as a queen excluder.
What do you do when the brood box is full? All the frames have got too much,
Whatever,
and there's no room to start taking one out.
you could do that. You could take a frame of honey out if it's capped. If you got frames full of pollen, those would be able to come out. You have to start taking it out. Are you using queen excluders?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they gotta have room, so take them out.
Do you have more than one hive?
They aren't full yet, but I just wondered when that does happen, what do we do?
Take them out and make room.
But they're gonna go ahead and swarm on you before you have the chance.
Give them something to do. So do you have two hives? Do you have extra hive equipment? Not yet? Okay, so think about this.
And that's your deep, you mean?
Yeah, if you go down and you get yourself an extra box and you got some of these frames, you can leave them out and maybe attract a swarm. Put some of that used stuff in there. Or
Then you'll need more equipment.
it's kind of like when you live on a farm and you got cats.
Yeah.
How many cats do you have on the farm? This week.
This week.
So, like, how many beehives do you have at your house today? You know, that wildly changes. So it gives you something that you can make a split and do a little bit of experimentation. You don't have to make the wife happy, but like, if you actually bring money into this bee hobby thing, you can sell the new, you know, there's some money to sell a new.
I think something important to maybe say there is, the bees don't care if it's deeper or medium. Give them a box, right?
Well,
So
we
you
got
got,
it.
yeah, you got that pile of mediums. Yeah, you got a pile of medium. So if that deep box is full and you don't have another bee, put a medium on. Okay.
we had a chance to get a swarm, we can set it up in a meeting.
Absolutely. The bees don't.
We were all meeting.
You just need to have.
You can always flip flop too, so like if they lay up a medium, have that queen excluder, because you can find the queen. Make sure she's below that queen excluder, give that box of brood above it, it'll purge out, and then they'll backfill it all with honey, it's okay.
Okay.
It's not gonna hurt.
All right.
So I've bashed queen excluders a lot, but they're a tool to use. So I had a lady, she started feeding her bees 1-to-1 sugar syrup in March. And her hive was like this, and she said, I think there's something wrong here. Okay, let's start looking. So we start looking. First box, oh, 5 queen cells, go down. 10 more queen cells. Oh my, more queen cells. And everything was packed tight. So it's like, and this hive was ferocious. She's like, I don't want to have to deal with these ferocious bees. So that means you gotta find the queen and squish her to bring something nicer. So she had like 4 queen excluders, and we put them between each box and waited for a little while. And then we came back and looked, well, there's no eggs here, queen's not here, none here. Oh, there's where she had that. And that made it a lot easier to find her. So queen excluder is a good tool, but I just don't like to use them.
How did you know she was in that one box?
So, eggs and very small.
So when you put just to make sure everybody gets this right, so when she put the queen excluders in there, how long did she leave?
It was about a week. Cause any of the other boxes that had eggs, they would be week-old larvae versus looking for eggs and very young.
But in March, isn't that a little bit early to, you let
It's
them
way-
make the queen?
Way early, yes.
So, you know, either, if you're gonna squish that queen, you're probably gonna wanna be finding someone that's send you a red queen to put in.
There was some other circumstances in there, but that's just the general gist of the story. Okay.
Hey, Jim, I'm sorry, not to harp on the pollen bound, but there's a lot of new folks here, so
Okay.
like, what is too much pollen? Like, where should they have concern versus the bees are good, just hammer down versus there's a problem and maybe I have too much pollen.
Okay, let's go back to the. Generally, the way it works is the food's on the outside and the brood is on the inside. So in these hives that I saw yesterday, and probably, were you the one that had all the pollen in your hive? Honey, your honey bomb. What they had done, because for whatever reason, they put pollen all in here. It was like totally full. And it wasn't on one frame. It was on like 18 of them. So generally you want to see some pollen around here because it's just more convenient for the worker bees to feed the larvae here to have the food here. Because the foragers will hand off the food to the house bees. The house bees will pack it away where they're gonna, close to where they're gonna use it. So too much would be frames and frames and frames of honey, of pollen like that in the hive, in the brood. Does that help clarify?
I think so, does that help new folks?
If you have 2 hives and you have a problem with one hive, like too much pollen, but can you put some in the other hive?
Yeah. I don't think I would use pollen. I think if I had too much pollen in one hive, I would just take the frame. That's what I would do. Would you do different?
You just gotta put eyes on the queen. So find the queen, that way you don't make a mistake and put queen from one hive in the other hive, and then you lose her. So if you put eyes, or a nuke or something on the side and then cherry pick through your frames and move them, just balance everybody out, that's okay.
Or you can take the frames and knock them off and put all the bees in there, just take the frame. Yeah, Cindy says they, well, as your
Well, that's what I say, that's not what we do. But that's what Tom said. Yeah, I try, but
You
but
can- you can-
someone, my co-beekeeper doesn't like it when I say just burn this frame, Colin. You're never gonna use this again.
Oh, Beekeeper.
And he's like, "Good."
She'll have a stack of stuff to burn, but then she won't be as eager to put in her order from a nunk, and I'm like, we got problems, we gotta have equipment.
It's inventory control.
Yeah.
You don't have that on your spreadsheet on your computer?
Somebody wants 10 knives and somebody.
I was gonna say, they're like, oh, right there.
Okay, black foundation makes it easier to find eggs down in the bottom of the hole.
Does everybody know that?
Game changer,
That is-
right there.
There's what we're looking, when you see something like that, you're good. So going back. So going back to how much is too much pollen? If you see one frame and it's blah, 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 whatever that is. Don't try to judge a hive by one frame. Look at more than one frame, maybe even 2 or 3 or 4, before you make a diagnosis. So if you see one frame that's totally packed with pollen, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's not. Look at a couple more frames and see what else you see in there. So if you got one frame that has a real crappy brood pattern, okay, well, this is crummy, but look for a couple more and see what it looks like. A lot of times you can diagnose a hive by one frame, but not necessarily all the time. Don't be afraid to take more frames up and see what's going on. Okay, so why is this good? Okay, so for me, I'm looking at this, this is pretty fresh comb. It's not dark and discolored. What I see is there's a lot of good brood pattern in here. There's different stages of larval development with maybe even that's an egg. I can't tell for sure, but this is really old larva. It's getting ready to stretch out and get a coating of wax over that. And then here's one that's probably 4 or 5. This one would be too old for them to make a queen of. So in looking at that frame, that's why that's a good frame. Plus anybody, the guy who put this together said it's a healthy frame, so it must be, right?
They're nice and wet too.
They're wet.
Yeah.
What are they wet with? Food. Royal jelly. So royal jelly is something that all the bees have, but the queen just has a diet strictly of royal jelly. Have you ever tasted royal jelly?
No.
Anybody? What does it taste like?
I don't know how I describe it. I taste it when we graft queens.
Oh,
So the grafting tool after each one, I'll lick it off, and if it's sour, I know I smashed the larva, and if it's sweet, then I know I didn't. That's a marlin.
it's got a lot of good ones.
Not me either.
Mhm. Okay. Now here's something. This is a good picture. So what is it? Is it a laying worker or a bad queen? See the pattern? It's crummy. Can't really see in the cells. But look at the size of the brood pattern. Is it big? No. So what does it look like? Are those worker cells or the drone cells?
Looks like
Drone.
To me, that looks like a frame that all the workers have hatched out, and that's the drones that are left because it takes them longer. So the queen I can't tell if there's eggs
Right.
in there, so it's possible that the queen could have backfilled it with eggs. Or it could be,
looks like there could be eggs.
or it could be a frame that was put above a big excluder she can't get to, and that's just the end of the,
So there's actually
larva there.
there's a lot of larvae in here.
is, okay, so yes,
Okay. See, all of these cells that we see here, they're sticking out.
yeah, they're drones.
They're drones. Okay. So if you got something like this, and it's not just on one frame, Who thinks you got a bad queen? Raise your hand. Who thinks it's laying worker? Who thinks,
Normal,
think it's normal?
yeah.
If you see this on more than one frame, do you think it's normal?
You get patches of drones,
I don't,
you know.
I might disagree with you.
With all the larvae there,
It's hard to tell like how many cells that I think is probably.
Yeah,
If it's just a little patch.
if it's a little patch, it could be one thing, but like I said, you can't diagnose a hive by one frame.
If you see
So-
them on every frame, you know.
Then, exactly. Then laying worker, that's a whole talk in and of itself. You don't wanna have that.
So just to recap, the difference between a laying worker, what am I gonna see versus a drone layer?
Well, that's gonna be hard to figure, cause if you got a drone layer, if you got a queen that's teetering out, she's just laying drones, but,
So I'll have one larva versus many larvae. It's one egg versus many eggs.
that can happen too.
So if that frame has larvae in it, to me, that is a good queen.
What kind of
And if you
larvae?
got a good queen, you're not
Well-
gonna have laying workers.
Do you want to have a brood pattern like this? Or do you wanna have one like that?
Yes, still do something because that's older and
Drones,
Yeah.
I think a patch of drones is normal.
A patch of drones is normal, yes. So like, right here,
Yeah.
there is a patch of the drones.
Right.
Right? So can we adequately diagnose this beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's one way or another?
You have more than one frame.
Is this a sign, could this be a sign of either a laying worker or a queen run out of
It'd
gas?
be a drone layer, yeah.
Okay, so what's a laying worker? How do you get there? A laying worker is, when the queen isn't there anymore, she gets squished, whatever, she's not there, and then one of the workers or several of the workers start to lay. And they don't swell up like a queen does, so it's really hard to distinguish between what a laying worker is and a queen, or not a laying worker and a regular. So that makes them a little bit hard to diagnose what's going on and see, cause you can't see the
The
laying worker.
reason they become laying workers is because the queen pheromone is not there anymore to suppress their laying. So for
Mhm.
people, the queen controls the pheromone in the hive, and if she's gone, right, then the workers will start to lay, and then the rest of the hive thinks they have a queen. So, yeah, that's like,
But if it's true, they'll have baby pheromones. And I think that's the person too.
Should. We've had years when it's really, really cold and the bees weren't moving around, the queens weren't moving around. And one side of the hive was all fine and it was clean, right? And the other side of the hive thought the queen was gone and they started making queens.
Is that a better example
That looks gnarly.
of, that's not laying workers?
Well,
All
it
those
looks
eggs.
looks like they're dead.
Laying workers, the egg spray or.
Multiple eggs.
They're multiple. But sometimes when queens
All
are
over.
just coming online, they'll do multiple like in a hole too.
you said, well,
These look dead.
not in the bottom.
Like 15 to 20 of those
Yeah, there's a bunch of eggs
And then
there.
how do they end up with the ones that?
draped over. Just,
I'd like to see the rest of that. Okay,
It was a hive that had gone laying work.
okay.
so Jim, if folks encounter a laying worker, how do they fix it? What's your recommendation?
All those eggs in there.
There's a couple different ways you can do this. One way is to take the hive a distance away from the hive stand, shake every single bee off, and then bring them all back. And then what's gonna happen is the laying workers are gonna stay here, they're not gonna be able to come back. There's one way. Another way would be to get some open larvae and put that in there and wait and see if they turn that into queen cell, like young eggs to do that. That would be a way. If you just take a regular queen and put it in there, they'll probably kill it because they think they have a queen based on the laying workers. The last way would be to take the frames in the laying worker hive and just bring them over to other queen right hives and then have them absorbed into that.
What about the drone layer, the queen that went kaput? Do they have to do anything special besides like the swapping that queen?
Say again now.
What about the queen that ran out of gas?
The queen that ran out of gas, you gotta squish her. Find her and squish her. Because she will probably kill whatever other queen you bring into there or tear down queens.
And the issue with that is, if she's playing drones, there's nothing they can make it queen from.
Right,
You
exactly,
gotta,
right,
you gotta
exactly.
force.
Yeah, queens are made from, worker eggs, larvae. Okay, American foul brood. You probably won't see this, but you may. Look at the brood pattern, it's really crummy, right? We've talked about crummy brood patterns. See, there's a toothpick there that's been dipped into, a larva. And you may not be able to see this, but there's like some roping here. Looks like a spaghetti noodle from there to there. That's the classic sign of it. Smell, we talked a little bit about that before. If you look in the bottom of the cells, you'll see, melted larva. That's actually a larva. It's not white, pearly white. There's uncapped cells here. The house bees can tell that the larva in there is dead and they're trying to take it out and overcome the infection. Some of these cells are domed in, they're not flush like the usual ones. Perforated cappings, that's another sign. European and American foul brood have very similar symptoms. The one dies at a different time than the other though.
Bees over in Europe get American foul brood as well, or is it?
That's good.
It's an exchange program.
I never heard that one. That's a good one. So again, we're looking at the brood pattern. Something's up, right? It's not wall to wall, every hole. Ooh, if you see something like that, you gotta start thinking what's going on. So if I see something like that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come to your place and like, if you see something like this and you're just not sure, give me a call and I'll put you on the top of the list and I'll come and take a look. So I'll come and I'll have a little Q-tip and I'll find 8 or 10 samples like this. I jam my Q-tip in there, put it in an envelope and mail it to Beltsville, Maryland, and then they culture the samples and see what, if any kind of bacteria. Okay. There's some queen cells.
Is that a free service or are they?
It's free. It's free. They have run into a situation last year where there was a bee tree that blew down. It was over by Rantoul. And the bees just started attacking people. And they're like, oh, I think I have Africanized bees. And so used to be, we could send them down to Phoenix or Tucson, the bee lab, and they would check the samples for free. Now, if you want to check your bees, you got to send them over to Purdue. I think it's like $150 and they'll do a analysis to find out what it was. And so,
A DNA test.
yeah. It's pretty quick turnaround time. So in my condition, in my sample, they found out that the bees were German. German bees are very, very prolific and make a lot of honey, but they're really, really grouchy. So
How big is German bee?
they're dark.
Yeah.
They're a little bit smaller. People don't keep them.
Yeah.
Because like, if you think a grumpy hive is no fun, they're like even worse. Yeah. Okay, queen cells. Varroa. Who doesn't know anything about Varroa? You don't, that's like a whole talk in and of itself. It's a little tiny mite that attaches itself to the bee. It sucks on the fat body of the bee, and that's where the bee has its immune system, it regulates hormones, it detoxifies pesticides, it is involved in storing nutrients, and it totally screws it up. Leaves an open wound. Prior to the varroa mite, which came in the nineties, beekeeping was strictly hands-off, but now because it's here, we have to keep that at bay. And if you have high levels, you could have brood patterns that look crummy like this. So what I've experienced is if you have a brood pattern like this and it's not American, it's not European foul brood, it's parasitic mite syndrome. You can see inside the holes with the dead larvae, you can actually see the varroa in there because the varroa has chewed on the larva and it's actually died. And when you roll the frame back and forth, those larvae tend to slide around into the hole where the sticky ones that are dead from European and American foul brood, they tend to stay still. Okay. I don't want to talk much about mites, except that the mite sampling plastic jar, it's got a yellow lid and a basket in it. People know what those are?
Easy check.
Yeah, I got one in the car, I got two in the car. Mite check. Become familiar with how to use those, because that lets you know how many mites you have. So in the beekeeping, your mite control should start in January or February using oxalic acid on a nice day. You should check your levels before the honey supers are on to make sure that they're down to good levels between 1 and 3 mites per 100. And then as soon as you take the honey supers off around Labor Day, Labor Day's 1st of September, right? I get Memorial Day and Labor Day. Wait, no. September 1st, take your honey supers off and then immediately start first taking a sample, see what your mite levels are, and then second treating for mite. I use a toothpick and I pick through drone brood just to see if there is varroa in there. Because the varroa mamas prefer to make their varroa babies in the drone cells because they know they can make more varroa babies in there. So that's where they start.
So if the mite levels greater than 3 per 100 are a problem, in order to pick through them, you're gonna be picking through 100 or so to see 3 mites.
So when I pick with the toothpick, I'm just looking to see if there's a varroa there or not. I'm not trying to quantify it. To quantify how many are in there, then I'm gonna take my varroa checker out and take the scoop of bees and check them that way and actually measure. Does that make sense?
Well, if you're gonna quantify via the bee check, the jar, what's the point of checking the drone?
What is my point in doing
Yeah,
that?
why are you?
I'm just looking to see if there's varroa in the hive.
I don't think he checks every hive with an easy check.
No, I don't.
It's like a spot check.
Yeah.
Okay.
And loosely, if I pick open 10 drone larvae and I see varroa on 2 of them, it's probably not a problem. But if I'm picking through drone larvae and I see 10, then I'm gonna say, hey, maybe you should do a mite wash on this to see how bad your mite load is. And so like, I don't know if I said this, but in September, when you take the honey supers off, you need to check before you treat and after you treat. Because if you have a mite level of 23 mites per 100 bees, that's pretty excessive. And just one varroa treatment may not put it down to a good level. So winter survivability relates to what kind of varroa levels you have in your hive. If you have low varroa levels, then your hive is going to be more apt to survive the winter. Okay, so the mistake that people make is they'll do their hive inspection, they'll look for all the disease stuff. And they say to me, well, I've looked for varroa on the bees and I don't see it. Well, when bees have varroa and they're out in the hive, generally the varroa is gonna be on their belly. And so when we're looking at bees, what are we looking at? Their back. So are you gonna visually see them? No. So the only way to know is to either pick through drone cells or do a mite wash to see what's going on. Cause you'll be surprised.
How many drone cells did you say you sample?
Well, it depends. And maybe
Like more than two is probably.
it's something like that. If there's more than two, then it requires something to be quantified. So then I'll get the mic checker out and do it that way. But I don't like to take 300 bees from a beekeeper's hive and kill them without them saying, okay. Now, there's a lot of people that would like not have a problem with that, but there are some people that would have a huge problem. And I don't want to be getting in people's way of doing that. You keep your bees however you want to keep them. And I'll, if you say, okay, I'll do it. So we talked about record keeping. Read and study. You all are here, so you're studying. Don't buy used woodenware. I've seen too many times where people buy used equipment and it turns out bad. There was a guy over in Fulton County, an old guy who's probably 75. In his younger years, he kept bees. He was also a farmer. So farmers don't like to get rid of things and they don't like to waste money. So he was like the perfect beekeeper. So in his younger years, he kept bees, he kept quite a bit of bees. And then one time he decided I'm too old to keep bees. And what did he do? He didn't burn it, but he put it in a corn crib. So the stuff sat there and sat there and sat there for 20 years. And so finally he had a grandson come up and say, hey, I'm gonna keep bees. Okay, grandpa gets out all the stuff and they start putting the hives together and they got like 10 or 20 of them. And I generally, when I'm looking at people's bees, I just go, because if I call you from a current telephone number, are you gonna answer your phone?
No.
No. Most people don't, so that, I just show up. So I showed up at this guy's place, I said, hi, I'm the bee inspector, I came to look at your bees today, and he says, oh, I'm so glad you're here. I've got something going on here, and I don't know what it is. So I get 10 feet away from the hive, I can smell something not right. Put it up, and I see one of those crummy brood patterns, and I put my toothpick in there and it's ropey. Okay, I was pretty sure that there was American foulbrood, I did the samples. And when I run into something like that, after I'm done with the bad hive, I'll take my hive tool, I'll put that someplace, and then I'll just like totally sterilize and start over with another suit, because I have another suit, another stuff so that I'm not transferring disease from one thing to the other. Send it sample to Beltsville. Sure enough, it was American foulbrood. And it sat there for 20 years unused, and that bacteria was still viable enough that it wiped out several of us. So that's why I don't like to use used equipment. Start over with something that's clean, something that you know doesn't have anything wrong with it. Resources. The bee supply catalogs have a lot of good resources. Anybody here of On the Spot Queen Rearing by Melvin Disselcohen? Yeah, this is a really, really good resource. So it talks about how to make queens. And so like people that are just starting out, maybe you want to do this, maybe you don't, but what I really like is how he manages his hives and the things that he does. I like his management stuff. This is available online.
And we have it in our club library, you can check out.
You can check it out for free. It's available online. This guy's a barber, but he's pretty good. He's getting to be old now. I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to him talk, but I would buy his book.
That's $80 you'll spend.
Right here, yep. Okay.
We said, do a state ISBA fall convention.
Another book that I like is A Guide to Honeybees and Their Maladies. This is Penn State. So I got this a long time ago. Maybe $15 for it, I don't remember. But I think there's an online version. Pictures, like when I learned to read, it was Sally, Dick, and Jane. And then when they took the pictures away, I was trying to, never really figured out how to read it. So, take pictures.
I got a good one for you next time, Jim. Remind me, I watch a copy. It's a University of Gall disease guide.
Oh, cool. Okay, resources. We already talked about the internet. Just be careful how you use it. Bounce what you find on the internet off of somebody, and there's plenty of people here with lots of years of experience. I know you got a lot of experience. I know you and your co-beekeeper got a lot of experience. You guys got experience. I'm not sure on the rest, if you do too. Bounce it off. You go to a club meeting and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? How do you do this? How do you do that? You know, there's as many different ways to keep bees as there are bees in your hive. So don't just because he does it this way, think you have to do it that way. You can do it that way or the other way. You can do whatever you want.
Another good thing that's coming up is this fall, the state ISBA meeting will have these major Georgia beekeeper. And then also,
Jamie Ellis from University of Florida,
so
He's
one of the largest bees, entomology departments in the world.
he's really good. So when I was looking,
And if you're a member of this club, you are automatically a member of my State Beekeepers Association because part of your dues here goes to them. So take advantage of it. There was a conference last Saturday that was really good.
in Effingham,
Yeah, in Effingham. So November 9th in Springfield.
so when I was looking for a place to check my genetics on the crazy bees, the University of Florida was the second place I was gonna go. Purdue was, ended up going. Sometimes you can find people in academia to talk to about bees or problems, but they're kind of hard to get. And sometimes the answers you get may not be too down to earth, like nuts and bolts type thing. Can't think of the guy's name. There's one guy. There's my contact information. I can't think of the name of the entomologist over at U of I, who's pretty good. But like the other ones are, no. Adam Dozel.
Yeah.
He's really good, nuts and bolts guy to talk to. We actually, did a survey for him, the bee inspectors. We collected samples and checked for mites, and he was doing a research project on that. He's good to talk to. So like a lot of times people text me or call me with problems. The guy that called me, he wanted to make a split and he wasn't sure what to do, so I coached him through it on the phone. A lot of times people will send me pictures of something. Hey, what does this look like? And I'll respond to those a lot. Sometimes that's enough, or sometimes I just have to go. So I have a stack of printed papers, both sides like this, of people that I'm supposed to get to in a year, and I don't get to them. So if you got a problem, give me a call and I'll put you to the top of the list.
Likes fresh baked goods.
I went there, Vera, Casa Vera. Vera Cruz.
Oh,
Vera Cruz. Yeah. So what did I miss in looking through it? Do you have any questions? Yes.
I just have one, okay, so you said fountain root smells like smelly science,
Sometimes.
and then. Golden. Yes. So how did the two smell different, or would you?
you never trust one thing. So just because it stinks, you wanna go look for those other things, you wanna look for the ropiness. you wanna see the soffit.
Gotcha.
Like you're never trusting, like Jim said, you never trust one frame, you never trust one sign.
And your goldenrod's gonna be at the top up in your honeysuckers anyway.
Only-
So, and usually in September, they're gonna cap it and
It doesn't smell like goldenrod, it smells like, it smells like
goldenrod just,
rotten egg.
you'll just,
I can still go in my drive. If we had some high components here, and I don't see, if you smell some wax, how would it smell to you? Good, sweet, not sour? If you took a comb that had American Bulgur, just by smell, and put your nose there, it's probably, but like Tom was saying, like I said already, it's gonna look like this. If you got goldenrod,
I didn't have that.
no, the goldenrod just, if you got goldenrod, you're gonna have good looking patterns, but it's just gonna be stinky. And then you'll also know, like, one of the things I talked about in the beginning, looking at the forage, what's blooming right now. Like right now, we got clover starting to dry up. It's coming to the end, but we don't see any goldenrod. When the goldenrod's in bloom, you know it, because you can see it everywhere. So it's just being aware of your surroundings and what's going on. So, yeah.
I think one thing that Jim probably didn't, or maybe he did lead off with, I don't know. Is the first thing he does when he looks, because I've watched him many times, he comes out and goes through all my nukes before I smell in the spring, and we see each other a fair bit. So the first thing Jim will do after the chit chat and the smoker and all this and that, is he'll walk to the hive and look at it before he touches anything, before he smokes anything. He'll look at the hive. And I think that's important right there, is that he's looking for a lot of things. He's looking for activity, but like he's also looking for pollen that's coming in. He's looking for behavior. He's looking for if there are yard darts at him, all those kinds of things, because then he knows what he's going into when he opens that hive. So like when it's goldenrod, you'll see that orange pollen all over those bees, whether it's in their pollen sacs. It'll be all over the front of the entrance on the hive. It's smeared on everything.
This hive is gonna be lethargic. You're not gonna see too many bees going in and out. So there was a bee inspector, his name was Danny Wright, he died 2 or 3 years ago. And he used to say that a beehive should look like an airport. Going in, going out, going in, going out. So it's taking your senses and looking at even the very teeny tiny details of, like Tom said, is there yellow pollen? Is there henbit pollen? What's going on? So it's being that in tune, like when you pop the inner cover, are the bees coming and bouncing off your veil? They can be either super aggressive, they can be right, or they can be lethargic. If they're lethargic, that could mean that they have one of the Parell's viruses, which would be symptoms of real high rural levels. So it's taking those teeny tiny details and being able to discern what's going on by looking at frames and everything else. So we talked a little bit about nosema, just very little bit. When there's stains of brown in front of the hive, that's a diarrhea that the bees get that causes them to be like, have diarrhea symptoms like we do. We don't really want to do much. And there's 2 different kinds of it. So, thank you.
If you get that brown on the front of your hive from that, like in the winter time or something like that, but can you paint over it?
You should clean it off because it's gonna be infectious, yeah.
Yeah.
Like going back to clean beehives work better than dirty ones. And if you got frames, a lot of time, the top bars will be stained with that stuff too. So those frames, some people, like, especially when you're starting out, you're like, okay, I got 10 frames, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause you're trying to do everything right, but like, if number 3 gets nosema on it, number 3 is going into the burn. It's expendable. Don't think of it as forever. Just like your queen. She's the queen, she's got a purpose, she's got a time where she's productive, and then she's done. 1 to 1 to 2 years, maybe 3, more likely 1 to 2. Thanks for the question. Anybody else? Yes.
Which of the fund resource grants did you say was really good?
And so,
Okay, what else? What did I miss? Somebody have a question? Yes.
Picture.
Pictures are good.
you can only buy that on one MD split it.
Oh, yeah. What is that? Okay. Can we pass this around her? Okay. Can you lock this? This is the iPhone.
Yeah.
Lock it to the hook tape.
Do that.
I know. I took it to Tom. Okay, so he's got a picture.
My house.
I like plastic foundation a lot. I use it, promote it 100%. But sometimes there's not enough wax on there. And sometimes when you're starting out with foundation, the bees are gonna do what the bees are gonna do. And so he's got a picture where bees didn't affix the wax on the piece of plastic. They fixed it like creatively on their own. So like, what are you gonna do with that? You can just pass it. So I tend to cut that stuff off because that's gonna be a problem getting in and out real easy because as soon as there's cat brood on there, it's gonna be a mess and it's gonna wipe it out and it's just a mess.
You can get your queen stuck under there.
Yeah, and you got 2 stories, you can't see what's going on the other side, so it's good to get into your hive once a week, so that if you see that kind of stuff, you just cut it off and start over. So if they do it again, maybe you take that piece of foundation and you get that wax that you cut off of there, heat it up and paint it back on the foundation, maybe they'll turn out better.
Just do me a favor, find your queen first before you go smashing
Just need to destroy all those eggs and
it. She likes to hide underneath.
Yeah.
If you're short bees, just find your queen, move that above and exclude. And let it emerge. If you're short bees, like in the beginning of the spring, I want bees, so we'll move it above the excluder and then let it emerge out, and you can scrape it off and everything.
Here's another trick. So we talked about bee trees, right? Who's ever done bee trees? Raise your hand. Who's gonna do bee trees again? Yeah. It's a fun thing that you do once. You let someone else do it. So what they do is they take the foam out of there, they'll cut it into pieces about the size of the frame, and they'll put like postal rubber bands and hold it in there till the bees draw it out, hopefully to the wood, and then it can be removable. So you can do that with all the things in there, and then like Tom said, put it so it hatches and then move it along.
Pay a certain amount of attention to what side's up.
Yeah.
So there'll be a slope. You can hit that one. That one picture where the,
Drones.
yeah, they were drones. They were pupa. They were like this. Just put it in the same position. That it was in. So does that answer your question? So there's things you can do. And like, if you got a little spectrum like this, rip it off and put it in your melt bucket. Good question.
The milk bucket.
Melt.
Melt bucket for
So
wax.
take like an ice cream tub with you when you're working your bees.
Oh, yeah.
Any extra milk, throw that in the bucket. And
Yeah.
Snap a lid on.
And then PK sends out the email which has all the upcoming stuff, where the next season will be, what next month will be.